Assassin's Creed Valhalla is shaping up to be one of the better AC games of recent memory. Things like deep customization, coherent main character, and actual assassins returning all sounds very appealing, but today I want to go over 5 things I want to see from AC Valhalla when it releases this fall. Remember that if you do enjoy today's video, leave it a nice, thick, and juicy like, and if you want more content like this, then be sure to subscribe. The first thing I want to talk about is learning through story. Now, this is something that the early games did very, very well, but recently it has fallen off with the introduction of skill trees to these games, and there's less of an emphasis on actually learning your skills in the story because obviously you can just get the skill tree and that kind of does its own thing. But anyway, I feel like there is a solution to this where you can learn through the story, but you can also be able to have this power leveling system that is confirmed to be coming to the game, where essentially you'll just have a skill tree and that increases your air quotes power. I think it would be very cool if the allies you met in the open world, not only would they help you with certain things, but if they have a specialized skill and you do more, say, side quests and things like that for them, you'll not only learn more about that character, but they'll be able to teach you a certain particular, more specialized skill that if you hadn't helped them, you would not normally have. And this way you can kind of build your characters much more specialized one way or another because you're unlocking these unique abilities or skills that, like I said, you wouldn't have had normally. And I think that would not only add to character progression and being able to specialize them in one kind of way for what kind of build you're going for, but I think this would also add that depth and interactability with the open world. And that's going to kind of lead into the next thing I want to talk about, and that's locations in the world with a story to them. If you look at Red Dead Redemption 2, this game is a shining example of this. Anytime you find any building or anything that catches your eye and you wander over to it, there's likely to be some kind of story to it, whether it's a soldier who's still manning his post 30 years after the end of the Civil War, or just an empty mud hut that has some papers left behind that you can loot and read about. There's plenty of situations that you can read on. Some are mundane, some are exciting. It just depends on what you stumble across at that particular time. And I think something like that actually coming to Assassin's Creed would be very cool, because the past 2 games in particular have mostly had pretty bland open worlds as far as being able to find something that has a story to it. Now, in Origins, I really liked things like being able to line up the stars and unlock that outfit at the pyramid. I think that's something really cool to have in the open world, but for the most part in Origins and Odyssey, a lot of the things you stumble across are either a bandit camp or cave with some treasure in it. It's not super varied. It is more of a problem in Odyssey than it is in Origins, but it's just, I would like to come across something interesting and it have something other than just, oh look, another bandit camp or another fort. I really enjoy in Red Dead 2 just exploring, finding something and finding out that there's so much more to this than just another house on the prairie. It's a really awesome feeling, especially when you are exploring and trying to have that immersive experience. And I think it's just very important for open world games, especially open world RPGs, to have something like this, because you need to be able to interact with the open world. And even though Red Dead isn't a truly full RPG or anything, it is kind of its own open world thing with little touches of certain things. It does do this aspect wonderfully. Interacting with the world in Red Dead 2 is nearly perfect. The next thing I want to talk about is hidden blade combat. So now that we're actually using assassins again, I want to be able to fight with my hidden blade. We haven't been able to do this since Assassin's Creed Black Flag, so it's been a while, and I think with Eivor being a Viking and the way Ash and Darby talk about him wanting to really show off his cool new weapon that he has on his arm, I do think that that may be a hint that hidden blade combat is coming back. Now, just assuming that this game is on the same engine as Origins and Odyssey, because this will be a transitional game between console generations, that's the only thing that holds me back from thinking that we possibly won't have hidden blade combat, but I would love to see some good old classic hidden blade combat. Take me back to the good old days. It would be very cool to see. Now, there would be some lore issues with that, because if I'm remembering correctly, Altair was the one who kind of introduced hidden blade combat, because if you remember in AC1 you couldn't fight with a hidden blade, but Ezio learns how to do it because he finds the codexes in AC2. So maybe it's a thing thing before Altair, because Altair does end up having to learn it himself, and maybe that's lost between Eivor and Altair, and you can kind of retcon that. I would be okay with a retcon like that, because you would kind of tie those characters together in a way, and they did say that this game would have a lot of ties to the other games in ways that you can kind of bind these games together. We have seen pictures of Middle Eastern looking characters in the backgrounds of some of the images we've gotten, so we know that hopefully there will be some ties between Origins, AC1, and Valhalla as games and as a series, and that's another thing I'm looking forward to. But the next thing I want to talk about is the second Siege of Paris. Now, this is a very specific thing that I'm talking about, and I don't have all the history on the actual second Siege of Paris, but it does take place 12 years after AC Valhalla's story. Now, I do remember way back when Origins was coming out, there was supposed to be a small Greek section that you could go to, and it ended up being cut from the game. But a lot of Assassin's Creed games do have these extra kind of air quotes set piece areas, like Rome in AC2, or any number of others, Africa in Assassin's Creed 4. There's a number of those throughout the series where you can just go and visit these not so fully fleshed out worlds, but it's a different area than what is normally seen in the game. And I think this will add a couple of things to the game. If we see the second Siege of Paris, that means that this game will take place over a longer period of time. And I like that, because that means we get more time to see Eivor grow and develop our relationship as players with the actual character in the game, be able to see who this guy is, how he learns over time, because you can't gain all the wisdom that Altair or Ezio or anyone had in a matter of a year or so. I think being able to tell that story over a period of time, be able to show Eivor growing and learning and becoming who I think he's supposed to come, because this is apparently supposed to be a redemption story, I think that would be awesome to see. The best games in the series take place over more than just a couple of years. Assassin's Creed 2 takes place over about 20 years. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood takes place over several years. Revelations 3, Black Flag, Unity, and Origins all take place over several years. So I don't think that that's a problem, that it's 12 years after the beginning of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. In fact, I think that might be how the game ends at the second Siege of Paris. I'm not sure. I might do a deeper dive into how it could fit into the story. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see that, kind of go a little bit more into the history about it and how it could work with Valhalla. The last thing I want to talk about is satisfying combat. So we already talked about Hidden Blade combat coming back, but I want to talk about combat because it's really been a struggle point for Assassin's Creed for a long time. They either go a little too much on the easy side, which is a lot of the early games, or they switch it up and now we have that kind of freeform combat style, and not everyone loves it. I personally don't mind it. I don't think it's bad, but it's not particularly amazing, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not like, oh yeah, Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey combat, it's so incredible. It's fine. I don't hate it, but they've never been able to find that fine line between something that is easy to pick up and something that is difficult to master. And I think that's kind of the key thing I want to see from the combat. It's anyone can pick it up and you can get through the story by just doing the basics, but if you really want to be good at the game, then there is depth to it to where you can master the more unique skills and combos within the combat and be able to kind of develop as a player and with your character so that you can have that satisfying combat experience. I think God of War is a great example of that. I mean, you have your more basic attacks that you can get through the story with, but as you go, you're going to want to pick up those more unique combos to be able to take on some of those varied enemies you see at the end, because we know we are getting a lot of different enemy archetypes, and I think being able to learn the different combat styles and how to approach these different enemies is going to be very key to this game. So hopefully that is something that comes with the combat. Like I said, we are going to see a lot of different enemy archetypes, so being able to have that depth to the combat is going to be very, very important. Anyway, those are my 5 things I want to see from Assassin's Creed Valhalla. If you enjoyed, let me know down below and leave a like on the video. If you didn't, let me know why, and I will see you guys in the next video.